This is the reason a whole lot of Halo fans are telling you to keep your $50 right where they sit, in your pocket. Halo Campaign Evolved arrived on July 28th of 2026 as Master Chief's big comeback, the first Halo to ever land on a PlayStation, dropping on the exact 25th anniversary of Xbox, and the people who actually bought it are not throwing a party. Instead, they're throwing hands. Here's the plan for today, and it stays simple. We're skipping the whole soap opera around this game, ignoring every side plot people keep dragging in, and locking onto three things and three things only, which are the price, the performance, and what they did to the characters. Line those three up next to a $50 sticker, and the mood around this launch starts to make complete sense. Let me be straight with you from the jump. In my opinion, this is the worst Halo we've had in a very long time, and that part is my take, so you're welcome to fight me on it. The part that isn't just my take is the receipts, because the numbers walk right up and back the mood, so let's get into all of it. Quick groundwork first, so nobody in the comments accuses me of skipping my homework. Halo Campaign Evolved is a full ground-up remake of the original 2001 Halo Combat Evolved, rebuilt inside Unreal Engine 5 by Halo Studios, the team formerly known as 343 Industries and published by Microsoft. This is not the 2011 Anniversary Edition, which amounted to a fresh coat of paint on the old game. What Halo Studios shipped this time is a rebuild from scratch, and the feature list carries real weight, since new visuals, re-recorded voices, and a remastered soundtrack come standard, along with 3 brand new prequel missions starring Master Chief and Sergeant Johnson, an expanded arsenal, a drivable Wraith, and co-op that stretches all the way to 4 players online. One detail deserves a highlighter because it comes back to bite later. Campaign Evolved is a campaign-only game with no competitive multiplayer anywhere inside it. A franchise that basically taught an entire generation how to live on Xbox Live went and shipped the campaign while bolting the door shut on multiplayer, and the asking price for that campaign-only package lands at $50. Hold on to that number, because that number is the entire story. Let's park on that $50 for a while. $49.99 gets you the standard edition, and if the premium tiers tempted you, the pricing climbs all the way up to a $200 collector's edition. $200 for a remake of a game that turns 25 this November. Right on cue, the Defenders show up with the usual line that remakes cost money to build, so be grateful and pay up. That argument falls apart the second you read the store page, because the whole pitch here leans on the word faithful. A faithful remake of a campaign a lot of us already beat multiple times 25 years back on the original Xbox. Paying $50 to re-experience something you already own inside your own head is a genuinely tough sell. The angry players aren't shouting into a void either, and their loudest single piece of advice carries real weight. Skip this, they keep saying, and go buy the Master Chief Collection instead. That drumbeat runs straight through the negative reviews because for a comparable chunk of money, one option hands you a single remade campaign with the multiplayer torn out, while the other unlocks an entire vault of Halo. The players already ran that math, and the answer didn't sit well with them. Here's the part the Defenders really can't wave away. You don't have to trust me that $50 overshoots what's in the box, because you can trust the professional critics, the people paid to find the generous angle. Even the reviewers who enjoyed this game kept tripping over the same admission, that they wanted more out of the remake considering its $50 price. Picture a critic handing over a decent score and still flinching at the number, when the friendly reviews and the furious players circle the exact same complaint. That's a consensus, and the consensus says the price does not match the plate. A gamer who calls $50 too much, they're reading the same room the critics are reading, and they're just the only ones honest enough to keep the wallet shut about it. Say the price never scared you off, and you paid the $50 purely to play some Halo. That's a simple ask, a single-player campaign, one person, no multiplayer to coordinate with anybody. On PC, that simple ask turned into a genuine ordeal. This single-player game launched with an always-online requirement bolted on, a mandatory Microsoft sign-in standing between you and the campaign. When the servers buckled at launch, players got stuffed into queues and slapped with login failures on a game they were trying to play entirely alone. One review nails it more sharply than I could, and I'm quoting it straight, that login failed and they cannot play the single-player game because the servers are overloaded. The same player signed off with a line for the ages that combat was not evolved. Sit with how backwards that is for a second. You buy a solo campaign, you're not competing against anyone, you're not co-oping with anyone, you simply want to shoot Covenant on your couch, and a server having a rough afternoon locks you out of the whole thing. The original Halo, running on the original Xbox 25 years ago, never once needed to phone a server just to let you press start, yet the modern $50 Unreal Engine 5 version somehow does. Getting through the front door didn't end the trouble because the PC reports kept stacking up, with crashes and stutter and mouse and keyboard input that felt a half beat behind your actual hands. One choice genuinely floors me, which is that the cutscenes run locked at 30 frames per second. Imagine playing this gorgeous, remade high-definition game, and every time the story tries to breathe, a cutscene kicks in and drags the whole thing down to 30. A little slap to the face on repeat. Fair is fair, so here's the balance I promised you. Console versions ran a lot cleaner, this mess landed mostly on PC, and plenty of people on strong rigs reported it playing fine for them. That balance is exactly the point though, because a publisher this size, a franchise this beloved, and a 25th anniversary launch hyped for months still couldn't hand a big slice of paying customers a stable experience on day one. None of that falls on the player, and none of it falls on your graphics card. A launch that wasn't ready went out the door anyway at near full price, with a server leash strapped onto a single-player game. When players call the performance bad and somebody fires back that it ran fine for them, congratulations to that one lucky machine because it didn't run fine for enough people to avoid leaving a mark. And every one of those people paid the same $50 you did. Now the piece that got fans genuinely upset, and the piece I find hardest to defend on the studio's behalf, comes down to the characters, with Cortana at the very center. Two complaints anchor the whole thing, and both of them land clean. Start with the redesign. Players took one look at the new Cortana and reached for the same two words over and over: uncanny and unsettling. A stranger standing where a character they'd carried in their heads for more than 2 decades used to be. Here's the detail that sharpens the knife, because none of this blindsided anybody. Fans flagged the new Cortana look the moment she was revealed, well before the game shipped, and one of the top posts on the Halo subreddit all year begged the studio to change it, calling the whole design uncanny and weird. What happened next tells you everything. Nothing about it changed. The studio absorbed feedback that came in loud and early and crystal clear, then shipped the design untouched. Chew on that for a bit because it runs deeper than one character model, since telling your community their opinion got noted and ignored. And then charging them $50 for the privilege of being ignored is a hard thing to walk back once the reviews start swinging. Next comes what they did to how she behaves. A recurring complaint pins this new Cortana as a character who handholds Master Chief and the player right alongside him straight through the entire game. Master Chief built his legend as gaming's quiet, unstoppable super soldier, with Cortana playing the sharp voice in his ear, so rebuilding that back and forth into a running walkthrough that narrates your next move doesn't modernize the original, it babysits the person on the controller. Players clock that shift immediately. A gamer calling these character choices bad is pointing at concrete, specific decisions. An uncanny redesign the fan base openly asks them not to ship, and a rewrite that treats a player like they've never held a controller before. It's a fan base that knows these characters better than the people who charge them $50 to meet them all over again. Time to pull back and read the scoreboard, because this is where the "it's actually fine" crowd loses the thread completely. Hold on to one fact above all the others. This is the lowest rated mainline Halo ever made. Let me lay the trend line down so it actually lands. The original Halo, Combat Evolved, the very game this remake is built on, sits at a 97 on Metacritic, one of the greatest shooters anyone has ever produced. This remake lands around an 80 on PlayStation, an 86 on Xbox, and a 77 on PC, which means even on its strongest platform, it slips below the original, and on PC, it's stranded down in the 70s. A pitch built entirely on remember how legendary the original was, managed to deliver the least legendary entry the series has ever put out. I'll shoot straight with you, the way we always do on this channel, because the critics treated it kinder than the players did. Reviews across the board leaned positive overall. The split underneath that number tells the real story though, since critics gave it a nod while the players flatly refused to. On Steam, the user rating sits mixed, hovering somewhere around 67 to 69% positive across many thousands of reviews. Mixed is the word attached to Halo now, to a franchise that used to define what a blockbuster launch even looked like. That gap between the paid reviews and the paying customers carries the whole tale. When critics say pretty good and customers call it an insult to the original, and yes, people reached for those exact words. The voices worth trusting belong to the folks who spent their own money. A free download code landed in the critics' laps, while the bill landed squarely on the players. Here's where that word worst circles back around. Calling this the worst Halo is my opinion, and you're free to disagree with me. The measurable version of that opinion barely leaves room to argue, because lowest rated mainline Halo in the history of the franchise, it's the record book. Some of you are already lining up the counterpoint, that the reviews may be middling, but people are surely still buying it, because it's Halo, and Halo sells no matter what. Let's look only at what we actually know, because I refuse to invent a doomsday figure just to make you feel better. Microsoft hasn't released official sales numbers, so anybody quoting you exact units sold is guessing. The launch week engagement data does exist, and it reads nothing like the triumphant homecoming they were selling. 25,000 players, give or take, marked the ceiling campaign Evolved reached on Steam on its launch day, a modest turnout for one of the most famous franchises the medium has ever produced. produced on one of the biggest platforms in the world. Commentators called it exactly what it looks like: underwhelming. Stack it against Microsoft's own recent games and it stings even worse. Early launch engagement came in around half, a little over half, of what Forza Horizon 6 pulled earlier this year. That's half of what a racing game managed. Master Chief, the literal mascot of the Xbox brand, drew roughly half the turnout of a game about cars. Day 1 tracking pointed the same direction. On launch day, the game ranked 4th in daily active users on Xbox, 14th on Steam, and all the way down at 29th on PlayStation. That PlayStation figure carries a special sting because this is the first Halo to ever reach a PlayStation, the big historic crossover moment. Master Chief planting a flag on Sony turf for the first time in history, and on day 1 he limped in at 29th. The flop question deserves a straight answer, and mine is no, because the sales numbers aren't public and it charted respectably in a couple of places. What this launch clearly did not do is set the world on fire the way a Halo launch is built to. The most famous Spartan in gaming came home for his 25th anniversary, on more platforms than ever before, and the crowd that turned up stayed polite, small, and clearly underwhelmed. The reason those numbers stayed modest isn't a mystery, and it circles right back to the 3 things this whole video has hammered: the price, the performance, and the choices. Players didn't show up in the numbers Microsoft wanted, and the players themselves already explained exactly why, laid out plainly in the reviews, completely free of charge. There's a version of this conversation where the fans catch the blame, painted as entitled, told the critics liked it, told they're impossible to please and will never be happy. You've heard that move 100 times. It's the reflex every single time a beloved franchise ships something thin, blaming the fans for daring to hold a standard. Look hard at what these fans are actually asking for though, because it isn't the moon. A game that boots up without a server queue on a single-player campaign sits near the top of the list. Right beside it stands a price that matches what's in the box, at a studio willing to not ignore feedback about a character the community flagged months ahead of time, and you've covered the whole ask. That's the floor, the absolute bare minimum. Nostalgia happens to be the single easiest thing on earth to sell. You take something people adored when they were younger, buff it to a shine, point straight at the memory, and charge them to feel it one more time. That's the entire business model at work here. Remember the ring, remember the chief, that'll be $50. The spell snaps the instant you catch the trick, because you realize you're not buying a great new game, you're buying your own good memories back at a markup with a server leash attached. The players who kept their wallets shut never fell for it. They weighed $50 against an always online headache, against what was done to Cortana, against the lowest score in franchise history, and they made the correct call. They said no. No is a complete sentence. Nobody owes a company money over something they loved 25 years ago, since loyalty is supposed to run in both directions, and this launch made painfully clear which direction it was actually running. So if $50 struck you as too much, you read the situation correctly. Anyone who watched that launch turn into a mess called it correctly. Wincing at those characters was the right instinct too. You had all of it pegged the entire time, and the scores, the numbers, even the critics eventually backed into agreeing with you. You simply arrived there first. Let's bring the ship in for a landing. Campaign Evolved was supposed to be a victory lap, the first Halo on PlayStation, a 25th anniversary celebration, the legend reborn inside a shiny new engine. What actually arrived was a campaign-only remake at $50, a launch that couldn't keep a single-player game online. A Cortana fans pleaded with them to fix and shipped anyway, the lowest review scores in the franchise's entire history, and a homecoming crowd that turned up at half the size of a car game. Through every bit of it, the players named the thing for exactly what it was. My opinion stands: the worst Halo we've had in a very long time. The record book goes further and calls it the worst rated mainline Halo ever made. Flat out, no asterisk. Here's my honest advice, the same one the players have been shouting since launch. Loving Halo doesn't require overpaying for this, and I say that as someone who genuinely loves Halo. Hold on to your $50, wait for the price to fall, or go grab the collection and get the whole legend for your money instead of a sliver of it. The gamers who said no thanks weren't hating the franchise. They respected it enough to hold it to a standard, and that respect is exactly what makes them the only kind of fan a company genuinely listens to, the kind that keeps its wallet closed until the game earns it. That's the video. If you held on to your $50, drop a comment and tell me what you spent it on instead, because I'd put real money on it beating a 30 frame per second cutscene. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.